Again, we're going to go over the day of Pentecost, Shavuot. They are going to try to tell us that all these things do not matter. All these Old Testament things just don't pertain to us. They just doesn't, they just don't matter to us today. But I would submit to you that they do. They very much do, because it is a commandment of Yahweh, right? Now, New Age Pentecost will try to tell you they are Pentecost and this is where they got their religion from. But that's not true as well. See, there's many falsities out there. But Yeshua told us that many will come. And many antichrists will come. Many of these people will come and say, right? They're going to say all these different things. But the world will receive them because they're of the world. So how do we know the difference? How do I know the difference between somebody that's celebrating, another day this day? Or how do I know the difference between somebody that's doing this or that and the other? Well, we know them by what? Their spirit, by what is leading, guiding, and directing them. We can see right off the bat if they're doing this for any other reason other than information for truth, then it's probably not a good thing, right? It's probably not a big deal to them. It's probably just something going on. So, what we have to do is discern, first of all, this is a command of Yahweh. This ain't just something thrown out there. This ain't just something to do. Some of these churches are just doing this because of doing it. Shalom. But we have to be careful when we just do things, because then we don't get informed of things. And when we don't get informed of things, we don't know what we're doing. Now, timing is everything. And timing does not change. People say, oh, times change, but no, not according to Yahweh. Yahweh said, I made the sun, the moon, I made this, I made that, and these are the days that you come and moed, appointed times, right? So Pentecost, we can go to good old Wikipedia and we'll start there. Pentecost, also called Whitsunday or Whitsun, which is a Christian holiday which takes place on the 50th day. What? The seventh Sunday. What? After Ishtar. Isn't this amazing that even in Wikipedia, even the world knows, even most Pentecostal churches are celebrating this today? They're celebrating the 50th day, the day of Pentecost. So it's not really a matter of timing, as we might think. It's not really a matter of we got it all wrong. It's a matter of, will we do it right? Will we believe? Will we? Because if they can even keep some of these times, then we know we should be able to keep these times. If Pentecost have a service on Pentecost Sunday, why can't we? Right? He commemorates the descent of the Holy Spirit upon the apostles and the followers of Yeshua while they were in Jerusalem. And it also goes back to what? What does it go back to? The giving of the Torah, right? It's amazing when we get all these different things, it's just thrown out. We forget about the beginning. But if we're not careful, aren't we like that? We we get this, we get that, we get our healing, we get our this, we get our that, and all of a sudden we forgot we don't have to keep this way. We can find everything in the book of why we don't want to keep the day that Yahweh told us to keep. The Septuagint uses the term Pentecostal to refer to the Feast of Pentecost twice, the book of Tobit and 2nd Maccabees. So, here we go. It's right here in clean, plain English. So even we can understand it, right? The problem becomes is what happens. We don't do what we're told to do. We don't do what we're told, so then it becomes a byword, if you will. It becomes something that we don't have to listen to any longer. We just go to church, we sit on the pew, and we do what they say. And as long as they tell us, then, hey, we're okay with that, right? As long as they tell us go and do these things and we do those things, then what can be wrong with that? How could it have been so wrong by doing these things? Well, surprise, surprise. Here's another good one, right? Did you know it might be a surprising way to figure out the things that we should be doing, the things that we ought to be doing, and yet we don't know what we're doing, sadly. So, on the day of the dedication of the temple built by King Solomon, there were 120 priests, 2 Chronicles 5 and 11. The Ark of the Covenant was brought into the temple, 2 Chronicles 5 and 7, and fire came down from heaven to consume the burnt offering, 2 Chronicles 7 and 7. There's Pentecost. Pentecost is not a new thing. Pentecost is not from the Pentecost. Pentecost is not nothing new under the sun. Pentecost has been and always has been since he told Moshe, since he gave him the Torah to do this, right? On the day of Pentecost, a company of 120 disciples was present in the upper room. Now, what happens here? They get the power. It's all about the power. There's nothing new of what happens. We're taught to believe that this is a new thing. We're taught to believe that we have something different. But truly, if we're better than they were, is that justice? If we are really better than what the disciples did, I'm sorry, did I not add that? I'll put that back up for a second. But this is what I was talking about. There is black and white, right? So the problem is we don't understand. A lot of people just don't understand what the scriptures is saying, because sadly we never really get taught what the scriptures are saying, do we? Do we really get taught the real scriptures? I mean, we can look it up right here for ourselves, and we can see in Tobit 2 and 1, Pentecost is used as an alternative name for the Jewish holiday Shavuot, right? So all these things, all these times, we end up missing because basically nobody wants to talk to us. Nobody wants to tell us. Nobody wants to inform us. Nobody wants to give us the truth of these days. Nobody wants to come and say, hey, this is what's really going on. This is the way it really should be. Why? Because then they would have to do something, right? Then they would actually have to do their job and teach us on these feast days. And my oh my, what kind of day would that be when all these people got Galatians and Bereans and all these other sayings and books and things that are in front of us, right? I mean, what kind of a thing could that be? Shalom and welcome. Now, the problem becomes, and we're going to go over some more here, that the problem becomes, again, we're just not taught the right things. We're not showed the right things. We don't get brought into the right things. So therefore, we don't know what's going on. But if we go to the Bible and we see feast days, right? Feast occurs 32 times in 31 verses. Now, this should be Moedim instead of feast, because people get confused when you start saying feast, because when you start saying feast, they're thinking it's time to eat something. They don't get the whole concept, right? We don't understand the whole feast thing. We think, oh, well, it's time to eat something. But no, it's not always time to eat something. It's a Moedim. That's the difference as well. Speaking to the children of Israel, and saying to them concerning the feast of Yahweh, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feasts. And again, that should be appointed day, Moedim, not feast. Different concept altogether. But when they changed the Council of Nicaea, and when they went and changed and rearranged and did these things, that's where they changed that to feast days, to obviously make it not as important sounding. I just don't want to go eat that day. I just don't want to do it that day. But these, again, are a commandment into who? Oh, of course, just the Jews, right? No, not just the Jews, all the children of Israel. And I must remind you here that there's more than the tribe of Yehuda. Yehuda is not the only children of Israel. There's 11 other tribes here, right? All the nations and tribes are there. Now, Leviticus 23:4. These are the Moedim of Yahweh, even holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their seasons. Nobody came and said, don't do this no more. Yeshua never said that, did he? He said, think not I've come to. He didn't even talk about the feast. He said the law and the prophets, right? Think not I've come to do away with these things. These are the feasts Yeshua himself kept them, right? These are the feasts of Yahweh, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. This is why people get all bent out of shape for doing things instead of representing Yahweh, right? They get bent out of shape for doing these different things because they're not doing the right things. They're not doing the things that Yahweh said to do. So they easily get miscombobulated into doing other ways and other things if they're not careful, right? So within saying that, it's really hard to talk to some people. It's really hard to get this into some people because a lot of them don't think they have to do it, even though the scripture says forever, all your generations. So let's go on. These are the Moedim of Yahweh, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, to offer an offering made by fire into Yahweh, a burnt offering, a meat offering, a sacrifice, a drink offering, everything upon his day. So whatever he says to do, that's the time and the date that we do it, right? So we do these things when he says to do them, not when we want to do them, not when we like to do them. Same thing with Passover. Passover, he says, come and have Passover. People try to incorporate hamburger meat or shank bone meat or whatever, chicken and all these other. He never said that. The true Passover, what we have to do is we have to understand, if you go to Daddy's house and Daddy says, I don't eat chicken, I don't eat this, I don't eat that, all I want on my table is Passover lamb, and we come and we bring a ham, Daddy's probably not going to be happy. We're talking about the Father Yahweh, right? We're talking about the creator of the universe. He doesn't say bring me ham or this. He said bring me lamb. Now, if you can't afford it, then he puts in place what? We have lamb, we have goat. And we also are told that we don't have to have the whole thing. If we can't afford it, we share it amongst each other, right? So there is where it's saying, have your meat offering, your sacrifice, your drink, everything upon his day. Nowhere does it say whenever you feel like it. If your church feels like celebrating, if they don't, it's all upon the days of Yahweh. And Moses declared unto the children of Israel the feast of Yahweh. These are all feast days. And I will make an offering by fire unto Yahweh, a burnt offering or a sacrifice, in performing a vow or a free will offering are in your solemn feast, to make a sweet savor unto Yahweh of the herd of the flock. These are the days, again, that if we don't do what Yahweh says and we don't come meet with him, how can we have anything from him? I would go as far as saying, where he says, depart from me, I don't know you. And he's not going to stutter. But you know what I'm saying? A lot of times we only look at what we want to do. But I would submit, why not go all out? If you're on the baseball team, you don't want to just hold a bat. You don't want to just go up there and hold the bat and say, oh, I got walked to base. You want to hit a home run, right? If you're on the weight team, you want to lift some weights. You want to show everybody there you're the best. Soccer team, boxing team, you don't want to go out there and get knocked out. I'm a boxer. No, you got knocked out, but technically I'm still a boxer. We don't live that way, right? We just don't act that way. But for some reason, when it comes to the Savior, when it comes to Yahweh, when it comes to everything in the Bible, we just say, oh, you know, But that's why we don't see the healings. This is why we don't see the restoration. This is why I would submit to you we don't see what Yeshua done. Because very few people want to do what he says to do. And when you don't do what he says to do, how can you have it all? You have a great football team, but you go out on the field, you're not going to win. You're just not. They're going to smash you, right? And this is what I submit that what most people, most churches are doing today. Sure, they got a team, but nobody knows how to play the game. Nobody even knows who's got the ball. They don't even know what's going on. They're too worried about song and dance and prancing than the true biblical way of doing things. These things you shall do unto Yahweh in your set feasts, beside your vows, your freewill offerings, your burnt offerings, and your meat offerings, and for your drink offerings, and for your peace offerings. That's a lot of offerings, right? 1 Chronicles 23:31. And to offer all burnt sacrifices unto Yahweh in the Sabbaths, in the full moons, and on the set feast days, by number according to the order commanded unto them continually before Yahweh. He don't say just do what you want to. He doesn't say when you feel like it. He says do it when I tell you to do it, when I show you to do it. 2 Chronicles 2:4, behold, I build a house to the name of Yahweh, my Elohim, to dedicate it to him, and to burn before him sweet incense. What is our sweet incense? Everybody thinks all this is done away with. This is Old Testament, right? Sweet incense is your prayers, right? Praying, and not always begging for help, but praying for your fellow brothers and sisters, for the people around you, for the people that's going to come and be healed before you. And the continual showbread, and for the burnt offerings, morning and evening, on the Sabbaths and on the full moons, and on the solemn feast of Yahweh our Elohim. This is an ordinance forever to Israel. Well, that's a whole mouthful. That's a whole lifelong dream right there, if you will. Is it not? It tells you basically in one verse that you're to keep the full moons, you're to keep my Sabbath, and you're supposed to keep my Moedim. And how long? An ordinance forever. Well, let's take that to the church and hand it to them and see what their pastor says. I'm not trying to be mean and ugly. I'm just saying, how can we let this go by? How can we? The apostles wouldn't have. Yeshua wouldn't have. You realize that the Pharisees would have been preaching the stuff they had today, he would have tore the place down. Why do you think he had such a problem with them? They was just doing traditions. They wasn't celebrating Ishtar. They wasn't putting up Christmas trees. They wasn't celebrating other days. His problem was they was adding to things. Don't add to and don't take away. Today we got both. We got Ishtar Sunday, but we don't keep Pentecost. We got this guy worried about that, and this guy worried about that, this woman worried, and everybody's worried about their own agenda because they think they heard something. I don't know how many churches I've been to, and they heard from God. Oh, I heard from God. Oh, I feel it tonight. You should feel it every day. He should be with you every day. He should walk with you every day. And today is the day of Pentecost, which is the day that you should be endued with power. This is a day of answers. This is the day of answers. This is the day that even as believers, sometimes we forget we have to wait. What did Yeshua say? Go and wait. We just take that as, yeah, them poor guys, they was just waiting for, no, they was waiting to be endued with power. Why? Oh, maybe because they all forsake him. Maybe because they all, when he got nailed to the stake, they all ran off and was scared that was going to happen to them. Maybe for whatever reasons, right? We know Peter, he sure needed some power. We know all of them needed power. We know we need power. So why would we not celebrate the day that he says to celebrate on the day he says to celebrate it and wait? on what he says to wait for, right? Even after a certain rate every day, offering according to the commandment of Moshe on the Sabbaths and on the full moons, on the solemn feasts 3 times in a year, even the feast of unleavened bread, and in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles. Now, this does not mean that this is the only feast you have to keep. It says offer, right? These are where you bring your offerings. This is a feast where you bring yourself. This is a feast where you are waiting, right? And again, sometimes we have to wait to hear from Yahweh. Sometimes we have to wait and see what's going to happen. But the problem becomes if we don't do that, or if we forget this, or if we miss this, we're missing everything, right? And even personally, sometimes we're waiting for these feast days and we get so upset. We get so tired. We're just wore out because we don't realize it's going to come on this day. Timing is everything with Yahweh. Whether we like it or not, whether we like his timing or not, whether we believe in it or not, timing is everything. And upon the feast days, upon the Moedim, is when we get our strengths. It's almost like one of those video games. Those video games, you get a power up, right? You playing Mario, you get a big mushroom, and you get big until you get hit, and then who are you? You're little Mario, right? Something comes, a turtle comes and bangs you in the head, and you're little bitty Mario. Well, just think where that concept might have come from. You're walking around, you're a big bad believer, you believe in all, you've seen healing, you've done this, you've done that, and boom. Life, the enemy, everything pops you on the head, and guess what? Now you're just little Mario walking around. Super prophet to little Mario. And now little Mario don't know what to do with himself. But Yahweh told you to wait upon him, and he will give you power. Well, what's this got to do with this? Well, everything. With hypocritical mockers and feasts, they gnashed upon me with their teeth. Wow. Psalms 35:16. Isaiah 1:14. Your new moons and your appointed feasts my soul hateth. They are trouble to me. I'm weary to bear them. That's some pretty harsh words, folks. That's some really, really hard things when he says your new moons and your appointed feast. Might want to look that up and see what that actually is there. He's saying your new moons, which would be what? Any other moon than the full moon? Crescent moon? No moon? Dark moon? Half a moon? Moony cheese? I mean, whatever you... But obviously, he's telling us how to get to the feast day because he says, your new moons and your appointed feast my soul hateth. Because it's Antichrist. Any other days, whether we like it or not, are not the Ruach. Any other times are not directed by Yahweh. Any other dates and times are just not what he put forth. So therefore he says he hates these days. So Ishtar, December 25th, this is why we don't celebrate them, because he said he hates them. How can we be in good with Papa when Papa says, I hate those days? Oh, well, we're going to celebrate December 25th and we're going to proclaim baby Jesus. Well, who is baby Jesus? Well, and on the story goes, right? We have to learn the ways of Yahweh. We have to do what he says. In their heat they will make their feast, and will make them drunken, and they may rejoice and sleep a perpetual sleep and not wake up, say the Yahweh. Folks, we want to do what Yahweh says to do. If we don't do what he says to do, man, it's just a problem. We'll do a couple more. Ezekiel 45:17. And it shall be the prince's part to give burnt offerings and meat offerings and grain offerings in the feast and in the full moons and in the Sabbaths, in the solemnities of the house of Israel. He shall prepare the sin offering and the meat offering and the burnt offering and the peace offerings to make reconciliation for the house of Israel. I mean, how can we restore anything if we're not doing what he says to do? Ezekiel 46:9. But when the people of the land shall come before Yahweh in the solemn feast, he that entereth in by the way of the north gate to worship shall go out by the way of the south gate. And he that entereth the way of the south gate shall go forth by the way of the north gate. He shall not return by the way of the gate wherefore he came in, but he shall go forth over against it. These feasts you should not be the same. It's great to come and say, oh, blah, 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 and read a verse and do this and do that. But if you're not committed, if you're not on the right day, if you're not doing what so saith Yahweh, what good are you? What good are you to yourself or to anyone else? You're just making a program, something you've seen from the past. Hey, let's get together and do the Christmas program and do the sing Noels and all that stuff. What does Noel mean again? And the feast and the solemnities and the meat offering shall be an ephah to bullock, and an ephah to a ram, and the lambs are as he is able to give, and an hin of him all to an ephah. We're pretty much on course here, right? We can pretty much see what so saith Yahweh. We can see what he's saying to do. He's telling us to go and do the feast days the way that he says to do them, on the days he said to do them. If we do it any other way, we're just hurting ourselves, folks. If we go and we listen to whatever we want to listen to, I mean, that's on us. He says, let each man work out his own salvation. And if we're not careful, I would submit to you, how can someone be saved if they don't do what the Father says? How can one truly be saved if they don't do what the Father tells them to do? I mean, to me, it's kind of, how does that work out? He says, go and keep my feast days. Over and over and over, he says, come and keep my feast days. And yet people just deny to do what he says to do. If it's not permittable to do your own thing, if it's not permittable to go into the garden and eat what you want to eat, if it's not permittable to go and do Sunday as a Sabbath, then is this permittable? Can we do what we want to do? I would submit no. As children, we cannot. We absolutely cannot. And that's all of us. That ain't just, we just can't do what we want to do. And if we don't, again, people say, well, is this a salvation issue? I believe everything in the scriptures, almost all of it, turns into a salvation issue, because if you love him, you'll keep his commandments. If you love the Messiah, you will do what he says, and in turn you'll do what the Father. It will be it says, my burden is light. It's a loving thing. If you love your wife, if you love your mom, if you love your daughter, don't you want to show them? On anniversary date, don't you want to give them something for their birthday? Even if you don't celebrate birthdays, but used to, you probably get the concept. You want to appreciate them. You want them to know that I love you. Here, right? If we don't do this, how can we prove we love the Creator? We're just words? How many people have been married and they said, I love you, and they got a divorce? Somebody didn't love somebody, right? Somebody, and do we really fall out of love, or people just don't love? But that's a whole different way and a whole different sermon. But, to really serve the Father, remember, we're only going to hear, it's not A, B, C, D, and E, and F, and Z option. We're only going to hear, well done, thou good and faithful servant, or depart from me, I never knew you. And some of these people, they won't even pronounce his name. They don't even want to talk about Yeshua. They want to, they want to say everything but that. And then they supplement Lord, which is bow, or they supplement this, but is that okay? And again, not with me. Is it okay with the Creator? Is it okay to give such the Messiah a black eye, if you will, by saying, yeah, I accept your steak, I accept your blood, but everything you said I disagree with. I will also cause her mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons, and her Sabbaths, and all her solemn feasts. Hosea 2 and 11. If we don't do what he says to do, how can we have this power that he tells us we should have? Malachi 2 and 3. Behold, I will corrupt your seed and spread dung upon your faces, even the dung of your solemn feast, and one shall take you away with it. Folks, we ain't got the calendar right. We ain't got the feast days right. We ain't doing this right. We're in trouble. That's what I see. We are in trouble. Talk about egg on your face. This is a little bit more than egg on your face, is it not? This is dung on your face. You go to church and tell them that. Go to Sunday church and say, why ain't you celebrating the Feast of Pentecost? It's a Sunday. There's your go-to. It's Sunday. Go do the feast, right? Well, I ain't got to. Well, he says that you're going to have dung on your face. You know how they have these horses and these donkeys and they have their parades, and you see that mess in the middle of the road from their horses and their donkeys and their elephants and whatever they have circusing around? What does that scripture say? Malachi 2 and 3. Look it up. Behold, I will corrupt your seed and spread dung upon your faces, even the dung of your solemn feast, and one shall take you away with it. That's dangerous, folks. Carried away with the dung. Let's go on. Matthew 23 and 6. And the love the othermost rooms at feast, and the chief seats in the synagogues. We see a lot of this too, right? We go and we want to be heard. We want to sit in the front row. We want everybody to know us. Is that the way it works? There's a lot of people out here on YouTube and social media. They're doing things just to do them. They're doing them to get a plaque on their wall. They're doing things for whatever reason it may be. It's something to do. It become a hobby. Whatever. But you're going to have to answer for these things, folks. This is not playtime. It's not toy time. It's not, and for those people that are trying to do that, hey, there's flower pots, there's airplanes. I mean, there's social media. There's all kinds of things that you can talk about other than the Bible, which won't get you in such a judgmental spot. So please, if you don't feel led by the Ruach, and you're not led by the Ruach, then please don't come and teach people about feast days. Don't come tell people what date is what when you don't even know. I mean, there's some people been in here for 2 weeks and a day, and they're telling people absolutely this is this, absolute this is this. And then there's some people that's been doing it for years and years, and they're doing the same thing, but they're still wrong. Show me scripture, show me truth, and then we'll talk. But, if we're not careful, this is going to be something very serious that we're going to be judged on. And the chief seats in the synagogues and the uppermost rooms at the feast. We got 2 more and we'll shut it down. Luke 20:46. Beware of the scribes which desire to walk in long robes, and love greetings in the markets, and the highest seats in the synagogues, and the chief rooms of the feast. But they're all going to the feast. You recognize that, right? He's telling beware of them in their long robes, and they love to be greeted. They love to have the highest seats they love the greatest of the great, but they're still keeping the feast. That's more than 90% of so-called religion is doing today. Bar none, right? I mean, they were still keeping the feast. But we want to talk about the Pharisees and the Sadducees and these and that, but we don't want to worry about the main heart of the matter, the Moedim of Yahweh. Jude 1 and 12. These are spots in your feast of charity, when they feast with you. Wait a minute. That's right, folks. There's more. He's basically saying, when you have a feast, Bring the people that can't be fed. Bring the people, bring the homeless. Be the ones that are not going to pay. The opposite of what we see today. The very opposite of what we see today. Michael Rood, come and join our. And I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just trying to be real. It happens. Come and join our Passover feast and donate this much money and put in this much money and do all these things. And this says the opposite. Invite the poor, invite the needy, invite the ones who can't pay, the ones who are not going to give you anything. Just the opposite of what we see in most cases. These are the spots in your feast of charity when they feast with you, feeding themselves without fear. Clouds they are without water, carried about of winds, trees whose fruitful wherewith, without fruit, twice dead, plucked by the roots. Wow. So again, these people are just going to do what they're going to do. They just come to eat. They just come for the show. They come to do whatever, but their heart's not in it. They're not really a part of the program, right? And you might see this time to time. People come and they're just not a part of the full program. They're just not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So we want to keep the feast. We want to do what he says to do because, again, that power is there. Those answers are there. That holy convocation should be there. If we don't do it, how can we have the power? You ever get to the end of the year, get later on in the year, and there's no power, there's nothing there, and then what happens? I ain't got the power I needed. I don't know how to get through this. I don't know how to get by this. I don't know what to do because we didn't wait for the answer. We didn't wait for the Ruach. We didn't wait for what he said to do. Right? So I hope this is edified. I hope it helps. I think it should show of how much we should keep the feast days. And we have to get them right, folks. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that agree to disagree and say all kinds of things. But if we don't do these the way that we're supposed to do these, then we're just failing. We're really just failing, whether we like it or not, whether we believe it or not. But according to these scriptures, we are failing. And in most cases, all we got to go back is a calendar or two, 300-400 years, maybe 500, maybe 1200 to find they was keeping these. Yeshua kept these. The disciples kept all them. I mean, Yeshua himself said, wait and do Pentecost, basically, right? Cut all of it out. Wait and come to Pentecost. So how can we ever get the opposite of that? How can we get, we ain't going to keep Pentecost? How can we get, we ain't going to keep any other feast day when Yeshua said, wait for the power to be endowed. Wait for, and he wasn't just talking about one time. This is not a one shot done. This ain't a sniper thing. He was saying the same thing from the beginning, right? Keep these feast days. Keep my feast days. Same thing all through Leviticus, Exodus, Numbers, all in there. You can read all about they was keeping feast days. And we just read a few things of what happens if you don't keep his feast days. Even in the new millennium, even in the new world, if you will, right? The perfected one. He says, if you don't keep my full moons and my feast days, you will get no rain. Well, that pretty much tells us we're going to be living off of crops. We're not going to be living off of, because what would rain matter? If we're this just supernatural thing that don't need anything, what does rain matter? Well, it matters a lot if you're trying to eat, if you're trying to grow your crops, if you want to have your pear tree and it's all brown and rotted on the ground because it ain't got no rain since last year. See, rain in due season. So I hope that's helped out again. I hope it is edified. But we have to keep the feast days. We need to keep the feast days. We need to do what? So saith Yahweh. So until next time, may Yahweh bless you. May his kindness shine upon you. May he grant you shalom. I pray for everybody that their answers are coming today, that they are endowed, they do have the power, endued with power, that they do have what they need. that I know there's a lot of things coming up, and I know this year's basically just started. So we need the power, we need the Ruach, we need that to go forward. So until next time, may Yahweh bless you. Shalom. If you need anything, of course, repent and turn to Yahweh, to Shiva. But if you need anything, let us know. Prayers, whatever it may be, immersions, whatever you need, let us know. Until next time, Yahweh bless you. Shalom. Thank you. Shalom and blessings.